Think back to what you were taught in school about the dawn of human civilization. You were likely told a very comforting, heroic story. Our ancient ancestors were miserable, starving, and constantly running for their lives in the brutal wilderness. But then, in a stroke of absolute genius, we discovered farming. We planted seeds, we stopped wandering, we built cities, and humanity finally became free. It is a beautiful story of progress. But when modern anthropologists and biologists actually look at the fossil record, they discover a truth that is completely terrifying. Farming did not free us. It was the single most devastating biological and social trap in the history of our species. The agricultural revolution did not save your ancestors. It enslaved them. Today, we are going to strip away the myths of the history books and uncover the dark, brutal reality of how humanity traded its ultimate freedom for chains made of wheat. And if you are obsessed with discovering the terrifying truths that history tried to hide from you, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. We decode the darkest evolutionary secrets of the human race every single week, and you absolutely do not want to miss the mysteries we uncover next. To understand the magnitude of this trap, you first have to look at the life of an ancient hunter-gatherer. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in small, mobile bands. We think of their lives as a constant, desperate struggle for survival, but the physical evidence tells a very different story. Hunter-gatherers actually had an incredibly rich, diverse diet. They ate dozens of different types of fruits, nuts, wild grains, and fresh meat. Because they constantly moved, they rarely suffered from infectious diseases, which usually require large, stagnant populations to spread. But the most shocking fact about ancient hunter-gatherers is their free time.
As you can see,
Studies of modern hunter-gatherer tribes that still exist today show that they only work about 15 to 20 hours a week to secure all the food they need. The rest of their time is spent socializing, resting, making art, and sleeping. They were tall, their bones were thick, and their teeth were incredibly healthy because they ate almost no refined sugar or pure carbohydrates. They were wild, fit, and completely free. Then, roughly 12,000 years ago, everything changed. We started planting wheat, rice, and potatoes. We stopped moving. At first glance, having a permanent field of food sounds like a massive upgrade. But let's look at this from a completely different biological perspective. Let's look at it from the perspective of the wheat. 10,000 years ago, wheat was just a random, fragile wild grass growing in a tiny corner of the Middle East. Suddenly, within a few short millennia, it spread across the entire planet. How did this simple grass conquer the earth? It did it by manipulating the most intelligent apex predator in the world to do all of its bidding. Wheat cannot grow in rocky soil, so humans broke their backs clearing fields. Wheat cannot share its sunlight, so humans spent hours under the burning sun pulling weeds. Wheat is incredibly thirsty, so humans hauled heavy buckets of water from rivers to keep it alive. Wheat is defenseless against insects and animals, so humans built walls and stood guard over it day and night. We did not domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated us. The word domesticate comes from the Latin word domus, which means house. And who is the one living in a house, tied to a specific piece of dirt, unable to leave because the crops need to be watered? It is the human. We traded a healthy, mobile life of 15 hours of work a week for a brutal, dawn-to-dusk existence of backbreaking physical labor. And what did we get in return for this agonizing work? We got a biological disaster. The human body was engineered over millions of years to walk, run, and climb. It was not engineered to bend over a plow for 10 hours a day. When archaeologists dig up the skeletons of the very first farmers, they find something horrific. Unlike the strong, healthy bones of the hunter-gatherers, the bones of early farmers are riddled with diseases. They show severe slipped discs, arthritis, and massive joint damage from endless, repetitive agricultural labor. Furthermore, because their diet shifted from a rich variety of wild foods to almost exclusively eating wheat, rice, or corn, their nutrition plummeted. They suffered from extreme vitamin deficiencies. Their teeth completely rotted away from the massive intake of carbohydrates. They literally worked themselves to death for a worse diet. If realizing that the miracle of farming was actually a biological nightmare is completely changing how you see human history, take 1 second to subscribe to the channel. Our tribe is exploring the dark, hidden traps of our evolution every week, and we want you surviving the journey with us. But the destruction of the human body was only the first part of the trap. The second part of the trap was much darker, and it destroyed human freedom forever. When you are a hunter-gatherer, you only hunt what you can eat today. You cannot hoard wealth, because you have to carry everything you own. Because there is no hoarded wealth, there are no kings. There are no rulers. Everyone is fundamentally equal. If a leader becomes a tyrant, you simply pack up your camp and walk away into the forest. Your mobility is your ultimate defense against oppression. But agriculture requires surplus. You grow enough grain in the summer to survive the winter. You store that massive pile of grain in a silo. But a silo full of food is a magnet. It attracts starving neighbors. It attracts bandits. It attracts danger. So, you have to build a wall around your grain. A wall needs guards. Guards need weapons. And suddenly, you need a warlord to organize the defense of your grain. Because you are tied to your fields, you can no longer run away. If a warlord demands that you give him 20% of your harvest as a tax for his protection, you cannot just pack up your farm and leave. Your entire life, your survival, and your family are permanently anchored to that specific patch of dirt. You are trapped. The invention of the grain silo was the exact moment in human history that true inequality was born. With surplus food, populations exploded. We were no longer small bands of 50 people. We became crowded villages, then towns, then massive, suffocating cities. And because we were now living shoulder to shoulder with thousands of other humans, alongside domesticated pigs, chickens, and cows, living right next to our own toxic waste, we created the ultimate breeding ground for death. Smallpox, measles, tuberculosis, and the flu. Almost all of the great infectious diseases in human history are zoonotic, meaning they mutated from farm animals and jumped into crowded human populations. The hunter-gatherers never dealt with these apocalyptic plagues. The plagues were the direct punishment for packing humanity into agricultural cages. So why did we do it? If farming ruined our bodies, destroyed our free time, introduced horrific diseases, and created tyrants and taxes, why didn't we just stop? Why didn't we go back to the forest? The terrifying answer is that by the time we realized it was a trap, it was entirely too late. Agriculture allowed human populations to multiply at an explosive rate. A patch of land that could support 10 hunter-gatherers could suddenly support 100 starving farmers. Once a tribe grew to 100 people, they could never go back to hunting and gathering, because the wild forest simply could not provide enough food for that many mouths. We had bred ourselves into a corner. And if those 100 starving, diseased farmers went to war with the 10 healthy, free hunter-gatherers next door, the farmers won every single time, simply by the brutal mathematics of overwhelming numbers. The trap snapped shut. Evolution does not care about your happiness. It does not care if your back hurts, or if your teeth are rotting, or if you are living as a slave to a warlord. Evolution only cares about one thing, multiplying the DNA. Agriculture was a massive success for the human species as a whole, but it was an absolute tragedy for the individual human being. We look back at our history and celebrate the empires, the pyramids, and the massive cities that agriculture made possible. But every single one of those monuments was built on the backs of millions of people who were broken by the soil. The invisible chains of the agricultural revolution are still wrapped around us today. When you sit in traffic to go to an office you hate, to work a job that exhausts you, to pay taxes to a system you cannot escape, you are doing the exact same thing your ancestor did when they bowed their head and pulled the plow. The fields just look a little different now. Thank you for walking through the dark, brutal history of human civilization with us today. If this video completely shattered the way you view progress and your own modern life, Prove it by hitting the subscribe button and leaving a like. We are decoding the raw, evolutionary traps that history tried to bury every single week, and we want you right here in the tribe. Until next time, respect your history, question your reality, and never forget the ancient price we paid for the world we live in today.
And the urban future.